The cafe was crowded that sunny afternoon, alive with the clatter of cups, the murmur of conversations, and the faint music drifting from the corner speakers. Yet, in the middle of all the noise, one table had fallen into an awkward silence. A young woman sat nervously with her hands folded, her cheeks red, her eyes fixed on the worn leather strap of her purse. Across from her, a sharply dressed man leaned back in his chair, smirking. In front of her lay a small folded bill, 5 crumpled dollars. That was all she had to her name for this blind date. And now, that simple truth was about to become her humiliation. Before we dive deeper into what happened next, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity, please like this video, share it with your friends, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us spread stories that touch the heart and remind the world that compassion still matters. The young woman's name was Amara, a quiet soul of 26 who worked as a maid in the grand mansion of a reclusive billionaire. To most people, she was invisible, blending into the background as she polished glass windows, scrubbed marble floors, and ironed expensive suits she would never wear. She lived in a small rented room with peeling paint and a leaky ceiling, but she carried herself with dignity, clinging to hope that one day life might smile at her. When her neighbor had set her up on a blind date, she hadn't expected much. She wore her best blouse, a faded cream one with tiny pearls missing from the buttons, and carefully tied her long dark hair into a simple braid. She slipped her last $5 bill into her purse, praying it might be enough to at least cover coffee. Her date, however, turned out to be Adrian, a man who wore arrogance like perfume. Dressed in a tailored navy suit and flashing an expensive watch, he eyed her with disdain. The moment the waiter brought the menus, Adrian leaned forward with a mocking smile and said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "So Amara, what are we having today? Something light, I suppose? Or should I order for both of us? Though I doubt $5 can cover much more than water." The color drained from her face. She hadn't told him about her money, yet somehow he had guessed. Perhaps it was her trembling hands, or the way she clutched her purse too tightly. Snickers floated from the table nearby, strangers pretending not to listen while enjoying her embarrassment. Adrian tapped the table with his manicured fingers, repeating, $5. On a date. Really? What Amara didn't realize was that across the cafe, in a quiet corner shielded by leafy plants, another man was watching. His name was Kalen, the billionaire she worked for. He had slipped in unnoticed, dressed down in a plain white shirt and jeans, craving the rare taste of ordinary life outside his gilded walls. He hadn't planned to eavesdrop, but the moment he recognized his maid, humility written all over her face, his chest tightened. Kalen had always observed Amara from a distance in his mansion. She never complained, never asked for more, yet always did her work with quiet pride. He knew nothing about her personal life, where she went after hours, how she survived. But he had sensed a quiet sorrow in her eyes, the kind of sorrow only those who had known hunger, loss, or hardship carried. Seeing her humiliated now by a man flaunting cruelty like entertainment sparked something in him. The waiter returned, and Adrian ordered extravagantly, steak, wine, dessert, without even glancing at her. "Don't worry," he announced loudly, "I'll cover it. I wouldn't want to put her $5 fortune in jeopardy." The waiter hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but scribbled down the order. Amara sat frozen, unable to breathe, her eyes stinging. She wanted to stand up and leave, but her legs felt anchored by shame. She thought of the years of cleaning floors, of skipped meals, of saving coins to survive, and here she was reduced to a cruel joke in front of strangers. Just then Kalen stood up. He moved slowly, deliberately, crossing the cafe until he reached their table. His presence commanded attention even without wealth displayed. People glanced up, sensing something unusual in his quiet intensity. Without introducing himself, Kalen placed a sleek black card on the table and said in a calm, even tone, "Add her bill to mine, and make it the most expensive meal on the menu." Adrian blinked, confused, then scoffed. "Who are you? Some kind of savior?" Kalen didn't look at him. He looked only at Amara. No one should be measured by what's in their wallet. True worth is never on paper. His words were simple, yet they sliced through the mocking laughter like a blade. The cafe fell into a hush. Adrian tried to laugh it off, but the waiter had already picked up the card with visible relief. Amara stared at Kalen, her lips trembling, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had known him only as the distant master of the house, someone untouchable, unreachable. Yet here he was, standing between her and humiliation. The meal went on, though Adrian quickly excused himself, muttering something about wasting his time. Amara sat in silence, struggling to hold back tears. She whispered, "I'm sorry you had to see that." But Kalen shook his head. "Don't ever apologize for someone else's cruelty." That moment marked the beginning of a change Amara could never have imagined. In the days that followed, Kalen found himself thinking about her more and more. He began noticing things he had overlooked. The quiet strength in the way she endured her work, the gentle kindness with which she helped the older staff, the small hum of songs she sang when polishing the grand piano. She was no ordinary maid. She was a fighter disguised in plain clothes. One afternoon, Kalen called her into his study. The vast room, lined with shelves of books and filled with the scent of polished oak, felt intimidating. Amara stood nervously, twisting her hands. Kalen gestured for her to sit. "I want to ask you something," he began, his voice measured. "If you had the chance to start over, to study, to chase something beyond these walls, what would you do?" She blinked, startled. No one had ever asked her that. After a long silence, she whispered, I always dreamed of being a teacher. But dreams like that belong to people with money, not maids with $5. Her words cracked in the middle, but her eyes burned with truth. Kylan leaned forward. "Dreams don't belong to money. They belong to courage, and you've already proven you have more courage than most." From that day, he began quietly investing in her future. At first, he arranged for her to take night classes, paying the fees anonymously. When she struggled with books and supplies, they appeared in her room as if by magic. Amara suspected, but she never dared to ask. What mattered was that for the first time in her life, the door to possibility had opened. Weeks turned into months. Amara blossomed under the weight of opportunity. She walked taller, her eyes brighter, her voice steadier. Yet she never lost her humility. She still scrubbed the mansion floors, still cared for the staff, still lived simply. But inside, hope was blooming. One evening, Kalen hosted a grand charity gala at his mansion. Guests arrived in glittering gowns and crisp tuxedos, their laughter echoing across the marble halls. Among the staff serving that night was Amara, her hair tied neatly, her uniform spotless. She moved gracefully through the crowd, unnoticed as always, until Kalen took the microphone. He spoke of education, of second chances, of unseen people who deserve to be seen. Then, with the entire room watching, he introduced Amara. She froze as her name echoed through the hall, her tray trembling in her hands. Kalen gestured toward her and said, "This woman is more than her uniform. She is courage, perseverance, and the future. Tonight, we begin a scholarship fund in her name, to honor every silent fighter who carries $5 but holds $1 million spirit." The room erupted in applause. Amara stood there stunned, tears streaming down her face as the wealthy guests turned toward her, not with mockery, but with admiration. For the first time, she was not invisible. She was extraordinary. If this story has touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Journal for more stories that remind us of the beauty of compassion. Your support helps spread light in a world that too often forgets kindness. In the years that followed, Amara finished her studies and became a teacher, her classroom filled with children who saw in her not just a teacher, but proof that resilience could break chains. Kylan remained by her side, not as a master and maid, but as a friend, a mentor, and eventually something deeper. Together, they built not just schools but legacies of kindness. She would never forget that cafe, the folded $5 bill, and the cruel laughter. But she would also never forget the moment someone chose to see her worth, to stand beside her when the world tried to break her spirit. That moment changed everything. And now we leave you with this. What would you have done if you had been sitting in that cafe? Would you have stayed silent? Or spoken up for someone's dignity? Please comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.